Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalam ala khatim al-anbiya. This is continuation of our sixth discourse, which is entitled Islamic Thought and Quran as source of this thought. We are trying to understand various aspects of the Quran. The slide in front of you touches on four aspects. When we talk about any book or any material as our source of guidance, then the question arises about its own authenticity and historicity. Is that document or book by itself historical or mythological? Do we have any evidence that this book was written or revealed at a specific time, at a specific space? You will find that most of religious classics of world religions cannot claim with surety about their historical existence. We are told that in Hindu scripture, which is the oldest one, for several centuries, whatever was said by the founders was orally learned and communicated, and nothing was preserved in the form of book. Same we hear about New Testament particularly, and none of the four primary writers of the New Testament ever witnessed or were present in the lifetime of Sayyidina Isa alayhi wassalam. The earliest one started becoming Christian after 45 years of his passing away according to Christian sources, and therefore never saw him. Rather, he was representing polytheistic concepts when he became Christian. Same applies to Buddha and same applies to Zoroaster and many others. So first thing you want to understand is the Quran a historical book? And what is its evidence? Secondly, you want to understand, is this book a subjective production, ideas of a person who is very much limited to his existence, and therefore subjectivity exists in that. All human works, whatever they may claim, are essentially a reflection of their own ideas. If Karl Marx wrote something, then it was his concept of history and materiality which he presented. If in modern times Bertrand Russell, a philosopher from Britain, wrote any ideas, it was always his personal views. And that means subjective material, not objective material. For a source to be relevant, it should not have emotional involvement of subjectivity, but should have a detached existence of objectivity. Therefore, second criteria for finding out how relevant the Quran could be is to understand, is it really an objective text sent down by someone who is not personally involved in it, and not a matter of reflection of personal feelings, but very objective and permanent kind of statements. Thirdly, all human creations, highest ideas, are always confined by the space and time in which those are presented. Therefore, we always say, this is the medieval thought, this is the prehistoric thought, this is modern thought, and that simply means what was medieval or in Stone Age is no more relevant for modern times. We need something new. If the Quran claims that it is guidance for the humanity, then is it also bound in space and time, or it has universality? And what is the evidence of its universality? And lastly, whatever guidance the Quran claims for human thought, is that really a matter of philosophical concepts, some theoretical constructs, or a matter of applicability? How far the concepts or teachings provided carry in them relevance for modern time? For first point that we raise, historicity, the Quran tells us that it was in month of Ramadan that it was sent down. Therefore, the time is very much identified. Then it tells us in Ramadan there was a blessed night, Lailatin Mubarakah. And then it says, even among those blessed nights, it was a night of power, which means it has itself narrowed down its historical revelation to the month of Ramadan, in that a period of blessed nights, which means the last 10 nights, and then at the same time it is further narrowed down into, and then it tells us that what was the first revelation. These 5 ayat, historically verified by statements of the Prophet and companions and circumstantial evidence, that these were the first revelatory ayah that came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the book tells us that it has been sent with a special messenger who brought it gradually. Gradual revelation of the Quran is indicated by Manazzalnahu Tanzila. We reveal it gradually. Tanzil means in segments, and inzal means when it comes in one single instance. Therefore, when the Quran says it was revealed in segments, it means that the revelation was not given just once to human beings, although the earlier revelation, Inna Anzalna. Anzalna means the whole text, while the word Tanzil means segments. So the time and the manner in which the book was revealed is defined by the book itself. It's not a matter of human conjecture, not a matter of later philosophers, experts who come up with the idea it may have taken place. No, the Quran says it took place like this, and period. Again, it is said it is not. Why was the Quran not revealed to him at once? It was revealed thus that we may strengthen your heart thereby, and we have revealed it gradually. Anyone who is involved in educational process knows very well that you always begin with elementary knowledge, then you go for secondary knowledge, then you go for higher knowledge. You build blocks of knowledge gradually. Therefore, the Quran also followed the same approach of coming up in segments, so the human mind and memory and psyche may be able to retain it, may be able to properly digest and grasp, and not to become a burden on human mind. What was the advantage? Those people who memorize the Quran tell us that it's much easier to memorize 5 or 10 ayat maximum at one time. And that's why you find that the first revelation was 5, odd and not too lengthy. And therefore you find that, and I give you example here, that first segment was 5 ayat of Al-Alaq, then Al-Mu'minun 10 ayat, An-Nur 10 ayat that came in one single segment, because by that time the human memory and retention was so tuned that it could very easily retain 10 ayat and place those in the sequence in which it was supposed to be. The Quran further tells us that the original text is preserved on Lawh al-Mahfuz in Baytul Izzah, somewhere in heaven. The total duration of revelation was 23 years, and as you see, it came out in segments. Now, for the protection of the text, which again becomes a question on when we look critically, most of world scriptures, although they are very much respected and revered by their followers, but none of those can claim that they are in their original form. Therefore, you find ongoing debate and discussion on New Testament, Old Testament, who wrote, when wrote, how wrote, and what have been the revised versions and so on and so forth. Actually, most of the scriptures carry on them a noting this is the revised version of the earlier one. King Jamesian version, American Bible Association version, Oxford University version, and each version carries different language, and sometimes the words are completely replaced. But in this matter, the Quran itself tells us that indeed it's we who have revealed this message, and indeed we who are its guarantor, guardian. Nahnu lahu lahafizun. Therefore, we find that during the Prophet's time, memorization and writing, two methods were used for the preservation of the text. This writing was done on the riq, which was leather parchment, in the same sequence as Sayyidina Jibreel guided, which means that the collection of the Quran and memorization both were not done chronologically. It's again a miracle of the Quran that each time an ayah came and Jibreel mentioned, it has to be placed at the end of that sentence or before that sentence. And just like you in your computer save a passage and then put it wherever you want to put it, similarly, human memory was trained in a manner that you take a piece, save it, and paste it where it belonged. And that's why the Quran is not a book where chronology is observed. Zayd bin Sabit and another 39 scribes, in all 40, around 40, were deputed during the Prophet time to be available day and night. They had their duties, and whenever a revelation came, one or more of them would write it down, and at the same time the Prophet will commit to his memory. Any question till now? Yes?
So when we are talking about the history of Islam, हम इस्लाम को क्या उस 1400 साल पहले वाले इस्लाम कंसिडर करें कि हम उसी की हिस्ट्री, अगर हम देखें तो इस्लाम तो हज़रत आदम अलैहिस्सलाम के साथ जो उनको दे के भेजा गया, जो डिफरेंट नबियों को डिफरेंट टाइम पे दे के भेजा गया, क्या हम उसको इस्लाम कंसिडर नहीं करते? क्या वो क्योंकि मैं सुन चुकी हूँ काफ़ी सारे लेक्चर्स में कि उनकी उम्मत के लोग भी जो फॉलोअर्स थे दे वर मुस्लिम, लेकिन वो उनको जो ड्यूटीज असाइन की गई थी, जो उनकी प्रोटोकॉल्स थे उनको फॉलो करने के, अगर वो फॉलो करते थे तो दे वर मुस्लिम। तो अगर हिस्ट्री की बात करें तो हिस्ट्री क्या वो हज़रत आदम अलैहिस्सलाम के साथ स्टार्ट नहीं हुई थी?
जी बहुत शुक्रिया. What we are doing right now is a very specific study of the Quran in the context of Quran as source of thought. And therefore our concern is to first and foremost make sure that Quran can act as a source or may not act as a source. This is our first problem that we are discussing. And for that we said that our main concern is to first ensure that the Quran was revealed in a historic period, not in a mythical period. Historic period means a situation where time and space is identified. Mythological means billions of years back when there was no evidence available with sense experience or in textual writing. And we only know that such thing took place as a belief. Example, 15,000 years of fighting of Ramayana are taken as a matter of fact by Hindus who believe. They say for that many years there were battles between gods and goddesses, and that is preserved in the epic known as Ramayana. Now, that is what we mean mythology. But if a text is written on a piece of paper, if a text is verified to be revealed in X time, that's what we call its historicity. We are not dealing with history of Islam. We are dealing with Quran as source of thought. Nevertheless, the question you raised still can be briefly answered. When we say Islamic history, then it means history of Islam. And Islam means Allah's acceptance as only creator and sustainer of humanity. At the same time, belief that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala periodically has sent guides who provided what Allah wanted from human beings. These two things are known as Islam. Whoever accepts these two things is a Muslim. It is in this sense that the Quran says Ibrahim was neither Jew nor Christian, balkana Musliman, but he was Muslim. It is in this sense that Sayyidina Nuh, Sayyidina Isa, and Sayyidina Musa, all in the Quran are called Muslim. Although their followers in different periods of history call themselves by other names. Jewish people call themselves Jews because they said we came from Judea. Therefore, we are Jews. Hindus call themselves Hindus because they said we came from Indus, which became Hindus, and that became Hinduism. Same for many others. Christians said, no, we believe in crucifixion of Jesus, and therefore we call ourselves Christians. All names of religions are given by their own followers or historians. Islam is the only faith which tells us that all messengers of Allah were Muslim, and therefore Islam is not a faith that emerged in 7th century Common Era. In that sense, all prophets were Muslims. The Quranic ayah, "Oh my Rabb, guide me. I don't want to be from Mushrik, but I am first of the Muslim." وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ कुल्लुन हदायत इला मुस्तकीम, पूरी आयत क्या है मौलाना? हाँ, अना अव्वलुल मुस्लिमीन, आखिर में आता है। ये हज़रत इब्राहिम कहते हैं, और लोग भी कहते हैं। That means the name Islam is not given to this faith which was given by Prophet Muhammad. It's a wrong understanding. Similarly, it's also total corruption to call it Mohammedanism, which has been done, or Mohammedans, which has been done for centuries. When we say Islamic history, which we also mean that history which started with Hijrah, and that is a separate discipline. It's not a course in Islamic history. What we are dealing is thought, human thought, Islamic thought, and Quran as a source. Again, when we define history in terms of serial time that began with the state in Medina, then we have many views of history which we are not discussing in this course. Maybe sometime when we are having a full semester course on Islamic history, we can address issues. Is that Muslim history? Is that history of kings? History of tyrants? History of good people, bad people? All those are irrelevant for us right now, because that's not our concern. Our concern is to look into Quran purely from analytical viewpoint and understand how far it is able to guide us as source of thought. Is that clear to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, this simply tells you that a large number of Qura, around 70 we are told, and some people say more, got Shahada in Battle of Yamama, which was waged against Musaylama Kazzab, who claimed to be prophet. And at that point, Umar insisted on collection of ajza in one single place, which means that there was already a tradition, a custom of maintaining individual facsimile sections written down on piece of paper, but there was not a central depository where all of them were put together. Since Qur'an were a source of Quranic preservation, therefore Umar insisted, and Abu Bakr agreed with him, and then deputed Zayd bin Sabit to collect all those, and at the same time follow a rigorous criteria, which means whoever comes with a piece of paper or a piece of leather skin on which an ayah was written should also bring 2 persons with him who should bear witness that when this person heard from the Prophet and wrote this passage on the paper, I was present at that time. This is the meaning of what is said here. In that sense, this is the only ayah which was with only one companion, whose name was Khuzaimah ibn Sabit Ansari. Which does not mean this ayah was not known to Zayd, not known to others. This ayah was part of their Quranic recitation every evening. All of them were reciting it. But since the criteria was that you should not accept unless 2 witnesses and the person who wrote are present, so Zayd said, sorry, I'll not accept your document. On that, he was told that Prophet declared that Zayd's own evidence is equal to 2 witnesses. Only then he accepted that piece of paper. Now that shows you rigorous criteria, objectivity. Abu Khuzaimah was a known Sahabi. No one could say that he is bringing a wrong evidence, wrong paper, because the ayah was already in the memory of everyone. Same ayah that they recite, but acceptance of document. And that tells you, which we will touch later on, that research methodology, which we think we are our discovery today, was applied on every single piece of paper that carried Quranic calligraphy or writing, as well as every single hadith which has been narrated to us. And in that sense, research methodology which we find today is much later discovery, while Muslims were applying it in their early period, that is 7th century. The same was further continued by Hazrat Usman, and his contribution was that he got the copy of Zayd bin Sabit's collection and then made copies from it, and those copies were placed in Makkah, Basra, Kufa, Damishq, Yemen, Bahrain and Medina. The copy kept in Jame Damishq and one in Al Hussein in Cairo and one in Tashkent survives, and I have seen myself Tashkent copy which is preserved there, and as such there is a continuous evidence of the same text recited in every Ramadan and heard by millions of people continuously, and the same text reproduced in handwritten form or printed form. Therefore, the first point which we discussed, historicity, is evidenced by all this material which is in front of you. Any question till now? کوئی سوال آپ کے اب تک؟
سر
جی
وہ یہ مینشنڈ ہے کہ میں نے پڑھا تھا کہ وہ جو قرآنک جو اسکرپٹ ہے بکس ہیں
جی
اوریجنل
جی
کے زمانے کی، اس کی جو عربک ہے وہ اس کا جو ٹیکسٹ ہے ڈفرینٹ قسم کا ہے.
جی بالکل ہے
سر، لیکن وہ آج کل کے لوگ ابھی بھی اس کو پڑھ سکتے ہیں اس طریقے سے؟
جی پڑھ سکتے ہیں. یہ ایسے ہی ہے کہ ایجپشین ہسٹری کا آپ مطالعہ فرمائیں گے تو آپ کو معلوم ہوگا کہ بک آف ڈیڈ کے نام سے کتاب پائی جاتی ہے، جس کے اندر فرائنہ کے زمانے میں جو ہائروگرافک رائٹنگ ہوتی تھی، سمبولک رائٹنگ ہوتی تھی، وہ استعمال کی گئی ہے. اور اگر آپ جائیں کبھی مصر تو آپ دیکھیں گے کہ احرام مصر اور مختلف مقامات پہ جو انسکرپشنز ہیں اسٹونز کے اندر، ان میں وہی خط موجود ہے. اس خط کے ماہرین پائے جاتے ہیں اور ان کو معلوم ہے کہ اس میں کیا لکھا ہوا ہے. ایسے ہی جو آپ کے بائبل ہے، بائبل کو پریزرو کیا گیا سرک کے اندر، جبکہ وہ اصل جو ترجمے ہم کو ملے ہیں قدیم سے قدیم وہ گریک اور لیٹن، جبکہ اوریجنل اس کی سیرک تھی. اچھا، وہ سیرک کے بھی جاننے والے لوگ آج بھی پائے جاتے ہیں جو پوری عمر سرو کرتے ہیں، تحقیق کرتے ہیں، ان سائنس کو سمجھتے ہیں، پھر ان کی تعبیر کرتے ہیں. تو جو علم ہے زبانوں کا، اس کے اندر آج بھی صلاحیت پائی جاتی ہے لوگوں میں کہ وہ اس کو پڑھ سکتے ہیں. فرق یہ ہے کہ ایک تو اس کا قلم بہت چوڑا ہے، اتنے دائرے نہیں ہیں جو ہمارے یہاں پائے جاتے ہیں. اچھا، جو اس کے اوپر حرکات ہیں وہ نہیں ہے جو ہمارے یہاں آج پائی جاتی ہیں. لیکن جن لوگوں کو مشق ہے مسودات کو پڑھنے کی اور اس کو سمجھنے کی، وہ اس کو پڑھ سکتے ہیں بآسانی. آپ بھی کوشش کریں تو پڑھ سکتے ہیں، کچھ نہ کچھ اس سے مطلب نکال سکتے ہیں، اس سے ملتا ہوا ہے یا نہیں ہے. تو چونکہ یہ بھی ایک پوری ہسٹری ہے یہ اموی دور کے اندر، اور اس کا سبب بھی یہ ہے جو آپ کے سامنے یہ بھی آ رہا ہے کہ قرآن کریم کی جو تلاوت بھی ہے اس کو بھی پریزرو کیا گیا اس بنا پر کہ یہ آپ کے سامنے ہے کہ بعض ٹرائبز جو تھے وہ بعض عربی کے الفاظ کو ادا کرتے وقت اس میں کچھ ویریشن پیدا کر دیتے. ربو کے تحت کے سریہ، ربش تحتش سریہ، یہ ایسے ہی ہے. اگر آپ पंजाब में किसी उर्दू ज़बान के PhD से भी ये कहें कि ये जो बाल जिब्रील है या ज़रब कलीम है ये किन साहब की लिखी हुई है, वो कहता है सर मोहम्मद इकबाल। इकबाल नहीं कहता, इकबाल कहता। जो चाहे कर लें आप। ऐसे ही जो शख्स बांग्लादेश से ताल्लुक़ रखता है, आप कहते हैं कि ये मेरे दोस्त अब्दुल जलील साहब हैं, इनसे मिलिए, वो कहते हैं जी अब्दुल जलील साहब बहुत खुशी हुई आपसे मिल करके। वो जो चाहे कर ले, अब्दुल जलील ही कहता है वो उनको। अच्छा, अगर वो यही कहता भी है, लिखता भी है, तो 5 साल बाद उन साहब को कौन जानेगा जलील के नाम से। This was the main problem because of dialect. Therefore, the contribution Usman made was that in the script which was used by Zaid bin Sabit, he got copies made of that and then placed them and asked people to tally their copies with them. So no other dialect or no other words get into the Quran. Now, I'm just sharing with you not because I want to teach you history of the Quran. No, my main concern is Islamic thought. Islamic thought is based on those assumptions which were applied in the Quran. Assumptions were that you must make sure every word and hyphen and comma, everything is exactly what it was. आप लोग बड़े फ़ख्र से कहते हैं जी वो मेरा जो मजमून है वो एविडेंस बेस्ड मैंने उसको लिखा है, और बड़े तालियां बजती हैं, क्या कहने साहब, बड़ा तीर मार दिया। Every single word, every single comma and hyphen, even sounds are properly. Therefore you find in many writings of the Quran, you have nowadays a new technique used. They make different colors to show what kind of sound it should carry. In the footnote, they give the key. Now, definitely, when this was the problem, like you find here, one tribe substituted sin with ta. Therefore, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ. If you hear that and your children pass that on to other generations, then after 5 generations there will be a battle. They will say, what are you doing with the Quran? You changed it. He said, no, not changed. This is what I heard from my father. So these clashes, these possibilities were eliminated, and that's why the Khulafa took it on as their responsibility to let only those copies of the Quran survive which were in conformity with it, and others who wrote in their own dialects were destroyed for once and for all. Okay. This term, the miracle of the Quran, Al-Ijaz Al-Ilmi Al-Quran, this is quite often used by scholars that teach us Quranic sciences, and they tell us that the Quranic miracle and uniqueness is that it has such eloquence and literary excellence that it cannot be compared with anyone else. And there is no doubt about it. Anyone who listens to Quran, and I have witnessed myself some new Muslims who don't know Arabic, they listen to Quran and they cry. It's not just a matter of people who know Arabic, but even those who may not know Arabic, the Quran has such a power that if you listen attentively, it affects your whole body. And even there are evidence-based researches which tell us that the genetic development that takes place for human beings, even when there is a genetic development going on, then the child to be born responds to listening of music as well as of the Quran. So there are effects of sound. Secondly, they say that it has such an internal link, a text which came down in 23 years, but not disjointed, linked together. They also say that coherence of ideas is unique, and therefore this is how it's a unique book. They also mention that it is so precise that you may write details of every statement in volumes. Therefore, there are scholars who wrote over 100 different applications and meanings of only Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Only one ayah elaborated in 100 different manners. They also say that the Quran carries some predictions which prove it's a unique book, and such predictions could not be other than divine, like in the Surah Ar-Rum about the success of Romans. They also say that its universality and comprehensiveness as guidance or hidayah is what makes it unique. And this is our main concern in this semester, how the Quran provides guidance for thought or development of Islamic thought. This comprehensive guidance is mentioned in the Quran in several places, and here it says we have neglected nothing in the book. That means whatever human knowledge demands should have its base in the Quran. And that persuaded Muslim scholars to go to universe and find out. The Quran talks about universe. Let's find out what's in the universe. They went to oceans to find out. The Quran talks about oceans. Let's see what's there. If the Quran says there are two waters flowing one beside the other, one is sweet, one is saltish, and they never mix. They said, let's try to find out where is it. And they found it. Even today, there are streams in oceans which are of sweet water. So the comprehensiveness of guidance means that it can provide. Among the major themes, the Quran refers repeatedly to universe. Surely your Rabb is none other than Allah, who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days and then ascended his throne, who causes the night to cover the day and then the day swiftly pursues the night, who created the sun and the moon and the stars, making them all subservient to his command. Lo, this is the creation and this is the command. Blessed is Allah, the Rabb of the whole universe. That means universe is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation for human beings to explore and not to worship. Unfortunately, a good number of human beings, impressed by the fascinating aspect of universe, they thought universe needs to be worshipped. Therefore, you have people who worship Mother Earth, who worship sun, Zoroastrians particularly, who worship fire, and at the same time in their rituals and ceremonies, they offer their sacrifices to nature. One of the obligatory ritual in Zoroastrianism is early morning prayer, which is done at the sunrise, and for that they have to go to a bank of river or on a sea beach, and then take a specific kind of juice and then drink that at the point which must coincide with first ray of light, and that is a kind of offering to sun in Zoroastrianism. So the Quran tells us universe is not holy or divine, but creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And secondly, it tells us we have made universe musakharat, we have make it musakhar for you, so you can go and use it for your benefit. Then what is the relation of human beings with universe? It's Allah who created the heavens and the earth, who sent down water from the heavens and thereby brought forth a variety of fruit as your sustenance, who subjected for you the ships that they may sail in the sea. The Quran tells us that this universe and whatever has been created is a matter of ongoing Allah's blessing, and particularly for those who think, who meditate, who analyze, for them it's extremely important to make sense out of it. Understand why is it. The Quran insists that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the originator. Badi' samawat means the originator, the one who created in the first instance. And at the same time, He is sustainer. For Him, everything is conquered, and He has the keys of heavens and earth. Whatever He wants, He can achieve by saying just one single word. That Allah is totally other and cannot be reduced to a dimension. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have a body, is not limited, but is there, and no one is comparable. No human mind and no imagination can come up with any dimensions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge or His person. So He is by Himself. This is again a Quranic theme that tells us about what is the status of human thought, and what is the status of those who claim that they are receiving some divine message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People who think that they have a direct link with the Creator. What's their status? So Quran rejects all those notions and concepts which have become very much deep-rooted in our society. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists by Himself. He does not need any support. This ayah is quite often memorized by every Muslim male and female and recited again and again to seek Allah's protection. But it tells us very clearly that He has no comparable, He has no limit, and He is the most elevated, highest, and the most strong, and no one can approach Him or ask Him to favor anyone unless He Himself allows that. So that takes care of all those popular conceptions that some pious persons, those who are supposed to be very spiritualist, they might recommend or they might help human beings in getting good reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the Quran talks about man's purpose of creation. And that is Allah's Khalifa on earth. The term Khalifa means a person who is appointed by someone else with certain authority and limitations. A Khalifa is not himself ruler, but he represents the real ruler. A Khalifa is not a mechanical device, but has liberty to act. Otherwise, he is not Khalifa. He is not controlled, but is free. A Khalifa is supposed to represent what the real ruler wants. So he is not independent either. So the word Khalifa indicates all those things which allow human beings freedom of thought, freedom of movement, freedom of rebellion, that even a Khalifa can rebel against his master and ruler. All those liberties are there. Human beings have been created with freedom of the will, so Allah may know, are they observing His directives or they are not observing His directives. The purpose of human creation besides Khilafah is to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the ayah says that jinn and human beings were created for no other purpose but to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we will go in details about this later on when we talk about what is Islamic understanding of ibadah and some other points that is in the lecture points we have mentioned about that. But we will go in details later on. Then the Quran tells us that the reason for man's superiority as Khalifa is the moral conduct. It is ethical judgment, deciding whatever is being done, is it right or wrong. That makes human beings different than any other creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is not obligatory on animals as it's on human beings to use their moral judgment in deciding matters. Therefore, man has essentially an ethical role. This ethical role is identified first by the term adl, then ihsan, and then by way of stopping from evil. All these actions are essentially ethical actions. Therefore, the purpose of human creation ultimately is to play a dynamic ethical role in society. Therefore, this ethical conduct is emphasized again and again. In this ayah, the Quran refers to how one should deal with parents and how one should try to obey them and please them and help them in all possible ways, to the extent that if any one of them or both are alive when they are very, very old, and often in such age people become fussy, even at that time the Quran says you should not say a single word of complaint or oof to them, but always listen to them and follow them. Second area of Quranic guidance is that of society. First, we talked about universe, we talked about man, human beings. Now we refer to the other aspect. Society in the Quran has three dimensions. First and foremost, a conceptual obligation that society must be created. Human beings have to create society. They should respect their mutual relations as parents, as children, as husband and wife, as neighbors, as relatives, and so on and so forth. So society should be created. It's not anti-societal. It is not a faith that asks people to leave the world and go to spirituality in forests and caves, but it wants society as an obligation. Secondly, it's an emotional necessity. It tells us that the relations we have created provide you emotional stability. The words used in the Quran for relation between husband and wife is that this gives you consolation, peace, protection, and satisfaction. It is just like if you conduct a study and try to find out from 20 persons as your sample who have no children and 20 who have children, how they feel. Do they feel they have accomplished their life objective, or they feel there is a gap, there is a vacuum? And when they see a child, how they feel about that? Which means that society and living a family life is an emotional necessity. To act against it is unnatural. This is why Islam said that celibacy is haram. If someone by choice decides to remain by himself or herself, then Islam does not accept it. It's against creation of society. Thirdly, a mechanism for civilizational sustainability. We'll have no civilization if we have no family, because civilizations are made by people who live and act and create and procreate. If you have no families, then you will have no continuation. It's through family you can communicate your moral and ethical values. It's through human beings that you come up with creative ideas. Recognizing the proactive role of an individual, Islam defines an individual in view of his or her social standing. A person is either a parent or a descendant or a legal relation of another person, which is done by aqd and nikah, that makes legal. Others are by blood relation. And I'm not aware of any human being who will say, I have no social relation at all, I'm just by myself. No human being can claim that. He must have a biological link with one or the other person. So society, and therefore Quran's emphasis on society is extremely important. It's not a faith which wants its people to become mystics, but people who are vibrant in society, who change society, who create a society which is pious and which is क्यों भाई ये क्या हुआ? ओके, थैंक यू वेरी मच. अब ये हमारा जो है, now family is the basic block of society. Therefore, the ayah refers to family as a norm necessary for emotional stability and sustainability of lineage and society. All these aspects are given in this first ayah of Surah Nisa, which is part of the khutbah masnoona for nikah. All over the world, you travel anywhere in the world, in the so-called Muslim world or even in the Western world, and if you attend any marriage ceremony, whoever officiates marriage in the khutbah recites this Quranic ayah, although not many people understand what is being said. It goes over their head without understanding. But the ayah says very clearly that we have made you from one single soul, so do not have female chauvinism nor male chauvinism. Don't claim in the name of empowerment that I am more powerful than you, and therefore be aggressive, demanding and domineering. No, min nafsin wahida. So you don't have genetic superiority by claiming that I am male, I am more superior, or female saying nowadays I am more productive than you, so I am more stronger than you. Both claims are false in the light of this Quranic ayah. Then it says very clearly that for that one single person we first created, we created his mate. And then from these two mates, we made a multiplicity of human beings. That means the purpose of marriage of these two persons was not just sitting in TV lounge and watching cartoons, but the purpose was to have children, creation, procreation, continuity of their nasl, their genealogy, and so on and so forth. And then at the same time, it tells us that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command and taqwa which leads you to demand rights from each other. Rights of husband and rights of wife should be based on the understanding of taqwa and also respect of this relationship which is of arham, and so on and so forth. So the ayah, one single ayah provides the basis. Then the Quranic thought refers to social responsibility, that human beings are not just individuals, but they have a social obligation. They, as a community, as an ummah, are commissioned to make sure that good prevails in society and whatever is unethical, wrong, vice, all that is ultimately removed and eliminated. So they should have the authority to enjoin, just as teachers in the classroom are kings. They enjoin, they prevail. Similarly, human beings in society have that responsibility to ensure that good prevails and whatever is unethical is not taken. So again, the Quran reminds us that we are... any question? Ji? Walaikum salam. Ji? जरा दोबारा कहिएगा जी। ये स्लाइड जो है जी, ये जो ये वाली इसके बारे में कह रहे हैं आप? जी सर। अच्छा, देखिए ऐसा है जी जी, ये ऐसा है कि जो अमर बिल मारूफ की जिम्मेदारी है और सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, इसका मतलब ये है कि इनफरादी हैसियत से और इज्तिमाई हैसियत से। यहाँ कहा गया कुंतुम खैरा उम्मतिन, कहीं और कहा गया वल्तकुम मिनकुम उम्मतुन यदूना, from you there must be a group, which makes group responsibility. Elsewhere said believers are awliya of each other, they advise for good and stop from evil. Here the words are used for individuals, that they are obliged towards each other for social responsibility. And here it is collective. So Amar bil Maruf and enjoining what is right and wrong is not simply collective, it's also individual. In this sense, education in the Quranic context is not communication of information, but implementation, realization of what is good and stopping from what is wrong. That means manners, disciplining, training behavior. Every single teacher should know that his or her responsibility is not giving a lecture or notes or giving a link on virtual learning. Go to the link and you will find all that folder there. But it's a matter of enjoining what is ethically, morally good. Are they observing cleanliness? Are they observing politeness in their manners? Are they trying to develop rebellious attitude? Are they depressed? Why depressed? When Islam has no room for depression. All those aspects are basic obligation of every believer, and particularly those who claim to be teachers. They have an obligation to convey what is ethically good. May that be a class of chemistry or physiology, makes no difference. Subject matter is irrelevant. Whatever subject matter, it provides the opportunity to look into it from ethical viewpoint. So it's both individual as well as collective responsibility. Is that clear, sir?
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Then it is not only individual and social, but it's a global responsibility. So the wordings here are لَتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. It's thus that we appointed you to be community ummah of the middle way, so that you might be witness, shuhada, to all mankind. Therefore, the third level is that of dissemination of what is right and ethical at global level. With the availability of so-called social media, no aged person, no teenager, no male and female can claim that, sorry, I don't know how to convey truth to people. If they can convey jokes every few minutes in their class to thousands of people through social media, why they cannot share something which is ethical and moral with their friends or even those they don't know? Therefore, in our situation, when this ayah says that you are shuhada ala nas, it means that whatever knowledge is acquired by us through interaction, through study, whatever may be the means of acquiring, that knowledge of good, that knowledge of what is wrong and should not be done, has to be communicated in its perfect form, best possible form. Only then we can say that we are fulfilling the mission and obligation on us as an ummah Allah has created. For that, the Quran insists that we should develop unity of thought, unity of hearts and minds. there is also an emphasis on global leadership, but it is subject to Allah's obedience. That if we are going to observe loyalty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is going to make us leaders of humanity. Similarly, there is a moral and legal obligation.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes,
Excuse me, sir.
yes, please.
अस्सलाम
Walaikum salam.
वालेकुम। सर इससे पिछली स्लाइड में था उम्मत का वस्त अल-यकून।
जी।
मतलब हम वस्त में कैसे हैं? हम तो आखिरी उम्मत है ना।
जी देखिए, वसतन का मतलब होता है वो चीज़ जो दो एक्सट्रीम्स पर नहीं है, और इस्लाम ये चाहता, भाई गर्म मिल जाएगी, इस्लाम ये चाहता है कि आपका तर्ज अमल जो है बुराई को मिटाने का और भलाई को कायम करने का, ये वो हो जो एक्सट्रीमिस्ट नहीं है बल्कि जो मिडिल ऑफ द वे है, जिसमें एतदाल है, जिसमें तवाजुन है. Therefore, ummatan wasatan means that ummah which follows the path of moderation, balance, adl, and is not extremist ummah. This is the meaning of wasat. Not that historically we are in 7th century and someone will come in 14th century. That's not the meaning of wasat. Wasat means very clearly those who are going to follow what is moderate, and as the Quran tells us about the Prophet, peace be upon him, as well as about us, the Quran says, do not tie down your hand to your neck, nor leave it open unlimited, which means that even when you are doing charity, have the attitude of wasat or moderation. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Shukriya. So the Quran tells us that while we are doing this mission, we have to unify ourselves, our hearts, our minds. فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ. Your hearts have been put together, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with faith given to us. And then it tells us that the global leadership, success in striving and establishing truth is promised for those who fight in the way of Allah without any fear and without any desire for reward. Now, if they do that, then they are going to succeed, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to make them leaders in the world. I was saying that among these, it's also mentioned that they have an obligation towards those who are oppressed. So the Quran quite often repeats that those who are mustadafin, those who are enslaved, you have to ensure that you liberate them as well. The Quran also refers to an issue which, and since we are dealing with how it plays role in human thought, it also refers to those issues which are very fresh nowadays, and people think these are new issues. But it talks about gender justice and not equality. Whosoever acts righteously, whether a male or a female, and is a believer, will surely grant him a good life, and will surely grant such persons their reward according to the best of their deeds. It's not a matter of male superiority or female superiority or equality. It's a matter of justice. If a female deserves more than others, then she must get more than others. Not because of gender, but because of her action, capability, and so on and so forth, or need. So the basis is not gender. Then at the same time, it talks about mutuality, that we should develop collaboration. So the Quran talks about they are guardians of each other, awliya ubad. In our common sense understanding, we use the word awliya only for those who are supposed to be living in forests or in shrines, and they become close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the wrong conception. Wali in the Quran is supporter of anyone, good or bad makes no difference. So there are awliya of Allah, awliya of shayateen. Both words are used in the Quran. Some are friends of shaitan, some are friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those who are friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are those who are involved in Amar bil Maruf and who stop people from doing something wrong. Socio-economic development is again a concern of the Quran. So it says, the righteous ones are those who do not claim every portion of their wealth, but recognize that a portion thereof belongs to poor and deprived. Which means that when we are giving someone what we call charity, it's not charity. It was his or her already. So you're not doing a favor. If we have that mindset, can anyone who has signed a check of 1 million rupees for the earthquake victims would like this check to be shown on television and recognize that I have done this favor? This money belongs to them already. You are only delivering that. Then what kind of favor? No favor at all. So it's a right of those persons. Then socio-economic development, wealth sharing with the aqraba, with the masakeen is an obligation, and that means that economic thought, social thought has to emerge from the Quran. Then referring to zakah, which is again, we will take it up when we talk about economic doctrines or economic thought of Islam. Then legal thought, that justice must be created and we should enjoin what is right and what is wrong. Again it says that you should not behave differently even with a people you don't like. Even those you don't like, you have to act with adl with them. So the ayah says, believers be upright, bearers of witness of Allah, and do not let enmity of any people move you or deviate you from justice. You should not have two standards. You should have only one standard. That means legal thought. Again, it is said that you should come up with that. What are the salient features? First and foremost, the Quran contains commands which relate with affairs of human beings and society. And that means that we have to find out basis for any commands in the Quran and then elaborate those in our Islamic thought. What's ethically good or maruf and bad and permissible is again provided. Similarly, development of personality, all psychological issues, lessons of history. History was mentioned in a question form. The Quran refers to certain nations when they behaved properly, they were supported by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When they act differently, they were destroyed. Reports of those who rejected and opposed the call for truth in the past and their destiny. Similarly, guidelines for social, political, economic and cultural matters, rights and obligations, book of nature, what's in nature, methodologies for dawah, for understanding the Quran and Sunnah, dialogue with Ahlul Kitab, Mushrikeen, Munafiqeen and Kuffar, ultimate destination of man and final judgment. These are some of the salient features of the Quran and therefore it provides source of guidance for Islamic thought in all of these areas. Then Allah's attributes, stories, promises made, warnings, favors done, purpose of man's presence on earth, Khilafah, Imama, Imara, all these are what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has touched in this book, and therefore this becomes the first source of Islamic thought.